All right, so everyone, this is Dr. Monty Burks. He's going to talk to you about faith-based initiatives and access to care. So I'm going to turn
And I'm going to share my screen. Just tell me when you're ready.
Just everyone remember, about 10 minutes before we'll do questions, please use the Q&A utility from Zoom, and I will put the link to his evaluation in the chat box and announce it when that happens. All right, Monty, take it away.
I always start my presentation with a smile. I learned this from my boss. Okay, I had to open up with that, Josh, to let everybody know that I was just as human as we all could be. I'm so excited to be on here, my friend. So I'm the director of faith-based initiatives. I'm a person that's in long-term recovery from substance abuse and a mental health diagnosis. I work with Josh, Chloe, Jack, Lincoln, Arsania, Sherman, all of my West Tennessee cohort and counterparts. And I'm very thankful to be on here today. We had a little technical snafu. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that it was not their fault, it was mine. I think I might have clicked on the wrong link. So I'm gonna go ahead and wear that. I'll wear that badge today, so I apologize. But I wanna talk to you today about our Office of Faith-Based Initiatives and some of the things that we're doing from the state level to work with our faith communities. And we've done a lot of work in Memphis and Shelby County. I spent a lot of time with Bishop and Pastor Diane and William Young, and also I worked with them on the Suicide in the Black Church Conference there, and I visited a bunch of different congregations in West Tennessee, and I'm very thankful for the leadership of our faith community in West Tennessee. I've spent a little time with the Episcopal Diocese, my good friend Lucy Owen and Ollie Rencher. I'm thankful to them as well for being, guiding figures in this thing that we're fighting, the substance use disorder issues and mental health issues in our community. So I'm going to talk to you about our faith-based initiatives. I'm the director of faith-based initiatives, and we're going to, do a presentation about what we do through our department. But also to talk about the wonderful people that work with us, our partners, our friends in the community, the wonderful advocates, people with lived experience. The opioid crisis hit Tennessee. We understand that opioids are not the only thing that people in Tennessee have suffered from, but I'm going to lay a foundation, a framework for how our faith-based initiative got started, so you can understand where we came from and what we were responding to. Between 1999 and 2015, prescription opioid data went up 710%. Prescriptions went up 710%. The rise in prescription data led to prime age women and men dropping out of the workforce. In 2015 alone, 28,200 men and 38,700 women in Tennessee were out of the labor force. Now you think about that. That's a lot of people. The detrimental effects of opioids on the labor market was true not only in our metropolitan, our non-rural areas, but also in our rural areas. The statistics were close to the same. So as the result of that labor decrease, those people being removed from the workforce, we lost a significant amount of work hours. To be exact, 900 million work hours. You multiply that times the current minimum wage, you've got $6.5 billion that blew out the window in lost wages that people could have used to take care of their families. People could have used to be responsive to other behavioral health issues and or concerns in their community and needs in their household. So we needed to explore a paradigm shift. What community could we closely work with? Who was the largest demographic? Well, that's where I came along. I was a Project Lifeline coordinator before I was the director of faith-based. And my job was to connect with the community, just like my good friend Lincoln Kaufman over there in Memphis with you guys. But we wanted to partner and leverage our faith community to be able to be the boots on the ground strategically. Our faith communities are present in all 95 counties. It's the largest single demographic community that we have in the state of Tennessee. There are over 12,000 congregations and or religious institutions in Tennessee. Now you think about that. That's larger than any demographic community that we have. They cover 95 counties. There's one or two or three or four different faith-based institutions in every single county in the state. You don't have many things that are present in every county. You have a health department, you have a sheriff's department, you have a jail, you have institutions of faith. So these are strategically located communities that have been there for a long time that can really be part of the behavioral health care continuum to help people get to resources. Over 3.5 million people in our state. attend faith and religious services on a weekly basis. Again, that's a large population of people to be able to pull into the fold. So how did we want to pull, and why did we want to pull our faith community in? Well, look at the data. You know, if you look at the number of people in our pews of our sanctuaries, and you look at the number of people who died of an overdose or died, who lost their life to a suicide situation, we have over 2.5 thousand people, 2,500 people of faith per one person who lost their life. 2,500 people per one person that lost their life. Now, I'm a peer. I'm a certified peer recovery specialist. People need to connect with people with lived experience. Sometimes all it takes is one person to connect with another person. So imagine if we had all of our institutions of faith involved in the behavioral healthcare continuum, the conversation around mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, harm reduction, all of these different processes that happen in our communities, and how we can be so much more effective and it can be beneficial to the communities. So what are our faith-based initiatives goals? Connect individuals struggling with addiction to treatment and people with mental health concerns to treatment. Facilitate an understanding of the difference between treatment and recovery. A lot of our community folks are professionals at many other things. Sometimes we get lost in translation as professionals, and we forget that a lot of our people in the community, sometimes there's a language barrier, communication barrier between what we do and what they may do. It doesn't mean that we both are not trying to help the same person. We just want to try to get on the same page. So the difference between treatment and recovery is a conversation that needs to be had, because we follow evidence-based standards of treatment, but all communities can provide some type of recovery support, because recovery support is not necessarily just going into a program. It can be toiletries, it can be food, it can be a hug, transportation, all these wonderful things. Increased knowledge of what addiction and mental health are, understanding the brain science behind addiction, understanding that a mental health diagnosis does not define the person. It's simply something that the person is dealing with at the time, or something that a person may have to deal with long term. But a diagnosis doesn't define a person. Understand what the continuum of care is and collaborate there. Prevention, treatment, recovery, criminal justice, relapse, relapse, relapse. Understanding that relapse is a part of recovery. Relapse is a part of a person trying to find that space in life to become the resilient advocate in the community. Help understand our best practice model and promote and improve the effectiveness of our faith-based initiative. Our goal is to work with every single congregation in the state of Tennessee. So how do we get started? We wanted to leverage all of these wonderful community-based partners across the state of Tennessee. And who are those community-based partners? Our community anti-drug coalitions, our Shelby County coalition, now known as substance abuse coalitions. We've moved away from the terminology community anti-drug, but I always mention that early so people understand there's a lot of people that haven't seen the shift in language of the substance abuse prevention coalitions, treatment and recovery courts, formerly known as drug courts, addiction recovery programs, ARP agencies, local health departments, health educators, local law enforcement agencies, and colleges and universities. So people always ask me, why would you want to leverage or work with colleges and universities on a faith-based initiative? Collegiate recovery is an absolutely important conversation to have in our communities. The majority of our colleges, two-year schools and universities, institutions are surrounded by communities of faith. Our young people that attend, they're in college, they're going to school, they need access to services too. And sometimes they may not be able to reach out because of their location, or simply some of the ministries that are provided at some of our faith-based institutions may be something that they would rather go to than to go to something that's more traditional from where we sit. So how do we build this capacity? One is we knew we needed to work with people or recruit people that had lived experience. Certified peers, certified peer recovery specialists. I think that just about everybody that I've spoken with that has been part of this event is connected to the CPRS movement. And we also wanted to connect our CPRS, our certified peer recovery specialists, to the faith-based community. And then we recruited faith-based community coordinators, project lifeliners, and then we have our Tennessee recovery navigators. So what are CPRSs? They help others on a path to recovery from mental illness or substance abuse. They have firsthand experience with mental illness and or substance abuse, and can offer support and understanding, guidance. They're not offering advice. They're not a therapist. They're not a sponsor. That's not what their job is. Their job is to let people understand that this is what recovery looks like on the other side. I'm a product of a resilient lifestyle. These are the things that I did to help find my freedom from the bondage that almost killed me. Have at least 2 years in active recovery and are willing to use their personal story to connect with other people. When they do that, they promote self-determination, personal responsibility, and yes, empowerment. So we have 3 faith-based coordinators. We actually have 4. We have 3 and an adjunct that works over in Shelby County as a third. They're split up into our 3 grand divisions, Middle East and West. So what is this best practice model that we talked about? So the best practice model that we try to work with our faith communities on is a really simplistic way to connect and understand what our faith communities do, where they are, and what type of resources that either we can provide for them or that they can help with in the community. Provide spiritual or pastoral support according to the congregation's culture. When we say congregation's culture, all congregations are not of the same belief system. All institutions of faith are not of the same belief system. So the culture of the congregation can really spearhead how the recovery process works in the community. All congregations, religious institutions, churches, synagogues, mosques, all of them are not going to participate in recovery activities or treatment activities, but at least they can have access to information to help somebody get to another place. View addiction by its definition as a treatable disease and move beyond the language of moral failure. Embrace and support people in recovery and walk with them on their journey. Fellowship with people, meet people where they are. Disseminate recovery information that our department can and will provide. Host or refer individuals to recovery support groups. Listen, 12,000 congregations don't have to have a recovery meeting, but it'd be great if all 12,000 knew of the other types of resources, recovery support services in their community. And lastly, become a certified recovery congregation and be visible in your community. Now we have quite a few people on this meeting today. So if you're interested in becoming part of this initiative and working with us, I know the COVID-19 situation has kind of slowed down a lot of our outreach, but it has not slowed down the things we're doing on Zoom, WebEx, FaceTime, and all of the other wonderful platforms that we can connect with people. Types of support ministries, recovery-friendly ministries, employment services and job training, outreach, life skills, relapse prevention, spiritual and faith-based support, education, childcare. A lot of congregations do a lot of this work. It'd be great to connect them to the continuum, connect them to treatment, connect them to prevention, connect them to other recovery agencies, so we can really get a full gambit of services to people. So in these pictures, we have a faith-based coordinator, Amy Bechtel, Prevention Coalition Director. They're in Jackson, Tennessee, Kristen Wilson. James Harper is a Middle Tennessee faith-based coordinator. To the far right, we have Bishop Sherman Mason. I call him Bishop Sherman Mason. I know he's a pastor, but I'm speaking that into existence because his personality will tell you everything about that. Bishop Sherman Mason, he is one of our recovery navigators, and he also works with us to help with our faith-based coordination. He's an awesome individual. Arsania Wright, who is in Memphis, she's a recovery navigator, and Will Taylor, who is one of our Middle Tennessee Project Lifeline coordinators. So here's our QR scan code. This QR scan is how our congregations connect with us. If you are part of a congregation or a faith-based group and you would like to connect with our faith-based initiative, take your Apple phone out, open your camera, hold it up, and a box will pop up and you can fill that information out. If you have an Android, you have a couple of options. You can download an app to be able to pull up the QR code, or you can ask your friend with an Apple phone to send it to you. They can text it to you or they can screenshot it to you. I'll leave it up for just a second. So the product of some of this work, we have 736 certified recovery congregations. We provided educational forums in all 95 counties. We've increased awareness of recovery support resources statewide. And our faith-based initiative is a resource for everyone. Again, that's Eric Landry in the top right corner. He's East Tennessee. On the bottom picture, we have my good friend Xavier, who wears the best bow ties in the world. He is out of Lauderdale County. He's one of our coalition directors. We have Lincoln Kaufman, who is your Lifeline coordinator. Lincoln right there. Lincoln is an amazing, absolutely amazing human being. I would implore anyone in the Shelby County area to connect with Lincoln. There's also Arsania, Brandon, Diane, and Melissa, all from different parts of West Tennessee. Connect with your navigators, your regional overdose prevention specialists, and all of your ancillary arms in the community, and just try to figure out how we can connect for resources. Remember that when people need help, they're not really worried about specifically what our role is. They're worried about how to get help for their family. It's incumbent on us as professional practitioners to, even though I might not be able to handle the situation, at least know what resources are available in the community. And that's what we want our faith-based communities to know: all of the different feeding pantries, all of the recovery meetings, what new initiatives are going on, who is doing harm reduction in what part of Shelby County, who is providing regional Narcan trainings in Shelby County. So here's a map of our faith-based coordinators. Again, there's their contact information. You can reach out to them if you have any questions. And again, these PowerPoint slides will be available for anybody that needs them. Jack, my good friend Jack Wyatt, will have access to this, and he can share this with everyone. So the second tier is the Lifeline Peer Project. So what exactly is the Lifeline Peer Project? I mentioned that Lincoln Kaufman is your lifeliner for Shelby County. Brandon Powell is your hybrid lifeliner. Sarah Mays is a hybrid lifeliner. Diane Sharon is your lifeliner. Chris Smith is another one of your lifeliners. They're all West Tennessee, west of Nashville. The Lifeline Peer Project was established to reduce the stigma related to the disease of addiction and increase community support for policies that provide for treatment and recovery services. The project approaches include establishment of evidence-based addiction and recovery programs and presentations for all different types of groups. So our faith-based coordinators present primarily to the faith community, but our Project Lifeliners present to all communities, civic groups, organizations, kickball clubs. It doesn't matter, motorcycle clubs. It doesn't matter. They will go out and talk about recovery, what recovery looks like, access to resources, and provide presentations on that. There are 17 Lifeliners. Here's a picture of our Lifeline coordinators. They're from all over the state of Tennessee. As you can see, they're a wonderfully culturally competent group of people. Some have big beards, some have bald heads. They're all like the most awesome people in the world. Each one is housed in a substance abuse prevention coalition across the state. To date, they provided around 5,600 recovery trainings. They've referred over 11,300 people into treatment and recovery services. These are just numbers that we can count. And they started well over 600 new recovery meetings. Here's a picture with Commissioner Williams and former Secretary Ann Hazlett out of the White House. They came to visit Nashville and wanted to meet some of our Lifeliners. So this is a group of our Lifeliners and faith-based coordinators. And to the far right is Alan Burnett out of Middle Tennessee. Alan's slogan that he puts these signs out in yards across his region, and it says, "Recovery is the new high. Reach out for caring hands." And this is part of what Lifeline does, is to reduce the stigma related to the disease of addiction. Sometimes we have to be vulnerable and tell our stories and let people know that there is another side to this thing. Just because you may have seen something in the news or you watched a TV show that told you that people who suffer from substance use disorder or who've had a mental health diagnosis never recover, never are able to get better, never able to change, that's not true. People who with lived experience have successfully navigated waters that are deeper and more dangerous than a lot of people have ever had to swim or wade in. So that lived experience is tantamount. It's the pinnacle piece of how these Lifeliners, these faith-based coordinators, these navigators, these ropes have dug into these communities and promoted recovery. So here's a map of all of the Lifeline project coordinators. In the boxes are the regional Lifeline coordinators. The ones at the bottom are the new 7. They're called the hybrid Lifeline. Again, get familiar with your Lifeline coordinators. If you want to pick up and call them sometime and have a great conversation, they will have an awesome conversation with you. I'll leave that up for just a second. So some of the types of trainings that our Lifeline coordinators and our faith-based coordinators provide to the faith communities, as well as other communities included, are trauma-informed care. Again, using person-first language, understanding that when you work with someone or you're dealing with someone, we have to meet them where they are. Listen to people. Question, persuade, refer, QPR. We work with TSPN, Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network, to provide QPR trainings across the state. Assist, applied suicide intervention skills training. It's a 2-day suicide prevention program. Building strong brains. How many of you guys have heard of building strong brains and ACEs? This is absolutely important when working in communities to, if for nothing else, understand ACEs and trauma. And mental health first aid, adolescent youth mental health first aid. Some of the other trainings they've been providing over the course of the last couple of years is the addicted brain, the addicted mind, faith and recovery, religion versus spirituality in recovery, support group facilitation, which is absolutely important. We have a lot of congregations that are interested in starting recovery support meetings, but sometimes they don't know where to start. So our Project Lifeliners and our faith-based coordinators can help them go through a training module on support group facilitation. And also our faith-based coordinators have worked on trainings with other different faith and groups around the country on sexual addiction and compulsion in the congregation, as well as gambling. So the last piece of this awesome puzzle and a unique piece to the team are our Tennessee Recovery Navigators. Now, the Recovery Navigators are the newer program on the block. Now, Jessica Ivy is the director of the Recovery Navigators. I'm going to briefly speak on kind of what her and her team do. They're an awesome group of individuals who are as well in long-term recovery. And their job is to connect people in the ERs and EDs. So they're a network of peers who provide access points to treatment and recovery. Again, their primary responsibility is to meet patients who have recently overdosed in the ER and ED. Now, Sherman Mason, his primary role, he works with us on our faith-based initiatives, but his primary role is a recovery navigator in Shelby County. And Arsania Wright, her primary role is a recovery navigator in Shelby County. And Arsania, I know you're listening right now. I call Arsania she and I have become very close over the years, and Sherman as well. She and I have connected and worked on different projects. It takes a village of people to help sometimes. And working with people like Arsania and Sherman, who are from, they're from Memphis. Arsania is on at least 3 billboards in Memphis to tell people her story, to let them know that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be vulnerable and reach out to people and talk to them and to figure out, what the resources are and how it can help other people. They inform a patient about the services available to help them enter treatment and eventually long-term recovery. That's the goal, is to get people into treatment and eventually long-term recovery. To change communities, you have to change communities from within. Communities have to heal from within. So utilizing people in those communities to promote long-term recovery, that's got a whole systemic change that can happen on the ground anywhere in the world. So our goal, by meeting patients in EDs, emergency departments or ERs, to break the cycle of overdose and increase the number of individuals who are connected with treatment and recovery resources. So what are these navigators? Navigators are CPRSs with lived experience. They're a resource for the ERs and EDs, and they help navigate the treatment and recovery continuum. This is what they're not. They're not law enforcement. They're not doctors, therapists, or clinicians, and they're not counselors or sponsors. Not in this role. To date, the navigators have served 3,776 patients across the state of Tennessee. And this is a huge number of people. Again, these are all individuals that are in long-term recovery, and the project is just a little over 2 years old. 3,776 patients served. Out of the 2,905 patients that the navigators saw in just the ERs and EDs, 42% of them expressed interest in Project Lifeline and were recommended to Project Lifeline. They wanted to find recovery. 40% of the patients expressed interest in being in touch with one of these recovery congregations that we talk about. So faith community, I'm talking directly to you and with you. Our navigators work in ERs and EDs. Our regional overdose prevention specialists work in law enforcement communities. They work with hospitals. They work in ERs and EDs and schools. Our goal and our job is to get people back to a resource so we can figure out if they need to go to treatment or not. Well, they can figure out if they need to go to treatment or not. We can get them an assessment, and we can use the tools and the instruments to figure out what type of resources may be available for them, where they're willing to go, and to get people into treatment or get people the services they need so we can promote recovery and start working on some things from the ground up. So here's the connection between all of these programs. Faith-based community coordinators, they recruit and build relationships with congregations willing to follow a best practice model. Congregations, if there's only 3 people that go to your congregation, you can do some heavy lifting. You have a bulletin board. You have a voice. You have people that have kids and grandkids and brothers and sisters. Promoting recovery, we have to continue to share the message that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to look at someone and see the human being and realize that they need help. So it doesn't take 10,000 members in a congregation. It takes one person to know what the resources are and one person to be able to connect the dots to get people there. So that's what our faith-based coordinators do, is we're connecting our congregations, if for nothing else, to start the conversation. And the second tier is we bring the lifeliners in behind that, and they work with these volunteer congregations to build support programs. So some of the support programs that are housed in some of our congregations across Tennessee with respect to these traditions, I'm not part of all of these traditions, but Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, Narcotics Anonymous, NA, Celebrate Recovery, CA, Cocaine Anonymous, MA, Meth Anonymous, All Recovery. There's all different types of recovery support services, sexual addiction and compulsion, recovery from issues related to pornography. All of these things can happen inside of our faith communities. And again, our faith communities are institutions that are older than the ones that any of you and I have ever worked for. So if you work in government, you work in a nonprofit, anywhere you work at, our faith communities were here before we were. And when you and I meet our maker, when we go back to the dust, the faith communities are still going to be here. So it's up to us as professionals to get information to them so they can build that machine that's going to last time. And they're going to be able to get resources to people and continue ministry works in their communities to, if nothing else, serve their community. It isn't always about outreach, but it's always about inreach. So if you've got 16 people that attend your congregation and you've got one certified peer recovery specialist, that's 15 people that can benefit from that one to understand what type of resources are out there to help people. And lastly, our Tennessee Recovery Navigators work with Project Lifeline to identify community-based resources, including, but not limited to, recovery congregations. When people awake from a traumatic experience like an overdose, they're going to ask you a few questions. They may not want to go to treatment, and technically they don't have to. They may want to be able to connect back to community. So if our congregations were who they want to connect back to, our congregations have the resources and the information to understand how to get them back to treatment if that's what's needed. Finishing pieces, connect the faith community to hospitals and treatment programs through the faith-based community coordinators, Project Lifeline, and Recovery Navigators. You've got your church health centers. You've got CAP. You've got Serenity House. You've got Teen Challenge. You've got all of these wonderful women of recovery, all of these different programs in West Tennessee, Teen Challenges, everybody that really can benefit from the faith community being connected to their ministry, Safe Harbors, Lighthouse Ministries. Connect the faith community to recovery support programs and resources. And the congregations identifying champions to become peer recovery specialists. The Healing Center, Bishop and Pastor Young, they've been really good about identifying champions, pals, peer advocate liaisons, and other family support specialists, and to really get them and their information out there to be able to better serve their community. Again, they've used the platform of the congregation to identify champions to drive a message into their community. And if they're either one of them are on here, just let them know they're in my thoughts and prayers. I love you guys, and I haven't seen you in a while. I know COVID has separated all of us, but we will be back together soon. So the additional information that I've covered, all the information that I covered is here. These are the links that are on the PowerPoint. So you can look up all of this information. Most of it's on our tn.gov website. If you wish to be part of our faith-based initiatives, please go to tn.gov/behavioral health, look up faith-based initiatives, reach out. I'd love to work with you, bring the team to work with you, or do something with you in some form of capacity. I love Shelby County. I love Memphis. I've done a lot of work in Memphis, spent a lot of good time with a lot of wonderful people. And I'm really glad to be on this presentation today. Here is my contact information if anybody needs it. I think I have some questions that are in the box, and I think I have just a few minutes to answer those questions. So I'm going to kick it back over to Josh, and we can get it going, man.
I am here, and you are correct. You do have a few minutes to answer some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me
tell you real quick. I went ahead and I put the link to the evaluation for Monty's presentation in the chat box, so you should see that in there now. And Bernetta Delk has a question. It says, where is the training scheduling for faith-based initiatives found, and are CEUs offered?
And so if you would like to get involved, all right, what if do you know where, I couldn't hear the name, where they are located?
I'm not sure where they're located.
Okay, so wait, I'm sorry. We can, if you would like to schedule a training, what we do is we have trainings that are listed on. You can go to Facebook, to the Project Lifeline Facebook page, or you can go to the West Tennessee Faith-Based Community Coordinators Facebook page, and they keep the trainings updated for the faith communities. But the trainings are not just for the faith community, for anybody, but we keep where our target audience is the faith community. If you would like to schedule a training, and you can't find what you're looking for, reach out to your faith-based coordinator. And again, you can look on my PowerPoint. Their information is on the PowerPoint that I provided. And it's also on our website, tn.gov/behavioral health faith-based initiatives. Reach out to one of our lifeliners or our faith-based coordinators, and they will schedule a training with your congregation. And we do the majority of our trainings right now. 99.9% are being done online. So we could really, really connect the dots and pull some masterful trainers in and provide not only faith-based trainings, but we could even possibly bring in some of our ropes and talk about Narcan, naloxone in the communities, talk about some other things as well. So thank you for that question. You can also, if you feel free to email me and I'll connect the dots for you. If you'd rather do that, you can email me and I'll connect the dots with you, with your faith-based coordinator and your Project Lifeline coordinator, Lincoln Kaufman.
All right. And this is not a question, but I think you probably want to hear this. So Donna Stewart says, I am in awe right now. This is where I'm destined to be. I did not know all this existed. So that's why we have these summits, right?
That is why we have the summits. And thank you for saying that. And I'm going to tell you this, you are exactly where you need to be. The recovery community is never too big. We always need people that have the ear to hear, the eyes to see, and the heart to be able to do something about it. Josh and myself, we've been around, man. And, you know, I met some ladies in it. You know, this is how small the world is, but how beautiful our faith community is. I went and spoke with some ladies at one of the Baptist churches in Memphis, and Josh had just left and done a naloxone training. And they talked about Josh for 20 minutes. Josh broke down the communication barrier so we could really get in and start talking about mental health in their congregation. But it was because of a 1-2 punch. That's how we did it. And we need more of that. So you're exactly where you need to be. Figure out where your advocacy is going to come, get involved and train. And thank you for saying that.
All right, Monty, and here's a great question. What % of churches in Shelby County participate with the faith-based initiative?
Oh, wow. So right offhand, I don't have that percentage, but I will tell you this. Out of the 736 congregations, Shelby County does have a significant impact. I don't like to quote, I don't like to guess a statistic. So I don't want to do that, but a significant portion are from Shelby County. We actually started our faith-based initiative in Shelby County. The late Pastor Kilsner provided our first meeting. He opened up the meeting at his congregation, and I was in, first I was in awe to meet him. Such a kind soul and recovery advocate, and I'm thankful for the service that he provided and the ministry work he done for years for the recovery community. I was as devastated as everyone else, but he helped us kick off our faith-based initiative. So we started in Memphis. I would say we have well over 200 different congregations that we work with in Memphis, but that doesn't mean that we don't need more, because a lot of congregations that we work with, again, they only do in-reach. They don't necessarily do outreach. We still need them to do that, but we would like to be connected with them just in case they want to do a Narcan training, just in case they want to do a QPR training, just in case they have somebody that walks into their congregation and we've built a great partnership and we can call our Sonia or Sherman and maybe walk them into treatment, what's a treatment program.
Right. And Amber Ashford wants to know, is this service available in Mississippi as well? Do you know anything about other states doing the same type of deal? So
if you can email me, I will give you I know of a group, I don't have their name offhand, but we have a sister project in the state of Mississippi that's trying to develop for some time. But the question that you asked may need you to be the one to be the catalyst for change. Mississippi has a wealth of communities of faith, and they've been working on a faith-based initiative. I've actually been in conversations with them over the course of the last 2 years. Josh actually sat with a ministerial alliance from Memphis in Washington, D.C. at a faith-based meeting from Mississippi and they were from right across the border, but they were Mississippi, Arkansas, and Memphis, Tennessee. And we were really able to connect. Whoever asked that question, shoot me an email and let me connect the dots for you. And I will put you in touch with the people down there, because I don't know how far they've come. I know with COVID, everything kind of took a seat back, but they're active roles that we're working with. They're also working with the state of Louisiana as well. So I'll connect the dots for you if you just shoot me an email.
Right. All right. KC asks, do you have to be a peer recovery specialist to be a recovery navigator?
The answer to that is, to be a recovery navigator, you have to be able to have the certified peer recovery specialist certification. because that certification is a designation that's part of the language of the scope and how our partnerships work with our hospitals and our treatment programs. So the answer to that is yes, but it's not as simple as that. Yes, that certification is a training that adapts the peer to be able to work in different settings and to be able to understand and evaluate situations differently. But there are other roles and entities that you could be a part of or work in that don't necessarily, you don't have to have a CPRS certification, that are quasi related to the same type of work. And again, I'd be happy to share those with you. And I think that Lincoln Kaufman would also be happy to share those with you as well.
Great. And the next question right along with it, how does someone become a certified peer recovery specialist? And
I'm going to let Josh share that in the comment section. I'm a certified peer. I'm not calling anybody up. There are some other ones on this call that are certified peers. We wear our badge proudly. So that's great that you asked that. And we need allies, peers, and friends.
And how can individuals in recovery, specifically 12-step fellowships, get involved and help with your initiative?
Reach out to your Project Lifeline director, reach out to our Sonny and Sherman or our faith-based coordinators. Reach out to them and tell them that you want to get involved. We're always looking to do more trainings to have open dialogue and conversations. So if you want to get involved, reach out to one of them, find out what's going on, and find out where you fit into the process. You don't have to you have to have an MD, PhD, DD, BS, BA, anything to be an advocate to help other people. Some of the most successful advocates we've had are people's, grandmothers. Grandmothers have unique tools to be able to connect with hard knuckleheads like myself. As a matter of fact, if a grandmother tells me to do something, I just do it. I don't care if it's your grandmother or mine. I'm going to go ahead and listen to leadership before I get in trouble. But we need more allies like that in the community to be able to provide, more access points to get people help. And again, sometimes people just need a hug. Now, I know it's COVID, so we can air hug, but it's still an opportunity for a person to find some type of resource or somebody to meet them where they're at. So your answer, reach out to one of our peers, go ahead and get yourself involved. I've seen hundreds of people just reach out to one of the coordinators, a lifeliner, a rope, a navigator, a coalition director. They reach out to them, and 2 years later, they're a certified peer recovery specialist out in the community doing some really great and awesome work, working for one of our partner programs. So I implore you, please get involved.
Thanks, Monty. And one more, how did your personal recovery journey lead you to doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, and I sure love to answer that question. My personal recovery journey, I hit rock bottom a little over 20 years ago. I'm actually working on my 21st year. And when I hit rock bottom, I didn't have any information at the time. Even though I was surrounded by people who had been through what I've been through, nobody talked about it. There was open advocation, but not on the level that it is now. We didn't have Josh. We didn't have Jill. We didn't have Jack. We didn't have Sherman. We didn't have Arsania. We didn't have Michael King. We didn't have all of these people that stand out and say, hey, I'm in recovery. So what happened is once I found freedom and once I got through the things I needed to get through, it caused me to shift my perspective and my education. I said, listen, I want to be educated on the things that I went through and how to connect people back to resources. So my personal journey actually changed my school of thought. And I ended up earning a master's degree and then eventually a doctorate. And all of my studies and all of the work that I've done have been geared toward my previous lifestyle and how to make sure that I'm understanding of the resources, how to connect resources, how to be able to help people in communities build their own resources. And I'm doing all of that from the platform or the perspective of a man that's in long-term recovery. Your long-term recovery is a doctoral level experience that you need to figure out how to articulate. And I don't like to speak in absolutes, but the recovery community needs you. They need your lived experience. Just like I give mine back graciously. Because once I walked through the program, I knew that it was a lifelong journey. And I knew that there were thousands of people that had ran into the same thing I did. I had no idea who to ask. Somebody asked me to go to a recovery meeting, and that's how I was able to find myself. If they hadn't asked me, there's no telling what other types of processes I would have went through. So I'm thankful to God. I'm thankful to my Creator that I was able to share that lived experience in that journey. And also, don't be afraid to tell your story. Just know your audience and know when and how to tell it.
Right. And it's important to know that anyone we see still in active addiction can have the same story. You know, if we take the stigma away, look at it for what it is, and get the help that we need, we can all blossom into what we're meant to be, right?
Yes.
And we got a few more minutes, and just I wanted to just real quick talk about an experience I had with the way this all works with the uh, the faith-based initiative. Lincoln and I signed up a church in North Memphis, probably a couple of years ago. I trained him on Narcan. We recently had a stop event out there where over 200 people showed up. A lot of Narcan went out into that community, and this is a high overdose area. And we've gotten about 12 reports of overdose reversals so far from that area, and also got a couple of people into treatment. And Sherman, that he was talking about, he hooked us up with a church out in Fraser. Same thing. I mean, we gave away 628 doses of Narcan that day into a community that was having a problem with overdoses. So, you know, we're going to be able to look at those numbers soon and to see what the effect is. But from what we understand overall, these areas, that number has been coming down as a result of having these events. And these churches who are signed up, faith-based recovery churches, are now acting as the liaison for that neighborhood. And people know they can come there and get Narcan and get access to treatment and things like that. So that's kind of how it works when we all come together and work on the same problem.